You've got pretty big clients now. It's been 3 to 4 years. You've built up the business. You've got pretty good revenue. You're doing quarter million, $500,000 a year. You're doing all right. And that one person leaves. Is it impossible to hire the next person? Absolutely not. You can probably figure it out in 7 to 10 days. But what's going to happen in those next 7 to 10 days? Is that going to hurt your client relationships? Is it going to hurt the performance of the business?
You're listening to Hustle Culture, a podcast that shows you how to take your hustle to the next level. I'm Jordan Glickman, a 24-year-old homeless entrepreneur who's constantly looking for a better way. Whether it be maximizing work-life balance while trying to reach my first 7 figures, or taking advantage of credit card points and biohacking my way to optimal health and efficiency, I'm all about it. Regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not, I invite you to join me in my journey of constant self-development. Join me and my guest as we deliver real value and actionable steps to embrace and make the most out of your hustle.
Welcome back to another episode of Hustle Culture. And today I want to talk about why entrepreneurship is so hard. And I think it is 10 times, and if not 100 times harder than you're ever going to expect it to be before you start. And even once you've started going, it's still going to be much harder than you expect it to be in the coming months, years, or probably even decades if I had to guess. I'm specifically recording this podcast on one of those days that I feel absolutely just burned out. I feel as if I have a boulder of self-doubt just hanging on top of my shoulders right now. And so my hopes in doing this is that this podcast is very raw. It's very real. It may be somewhat of a rant, especially if the points I'm going to make relate to anything that's going on in what's happening right now for myself. But I think that's what the point of this overall podcast is about, is showing my audience and the people that are willing to give their time to listen to this, the reality of this journey that I'm taking to achieve, well, a lot of things: financial freedom, stability, the ability to make choices, all of the things that I've talked about in some of my previous podcasts, the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. So in summary, a little bit of sarcasm here, but if you don't want to sit around for 5 minutes while I break all of this down, then by all means go back to playing Fortnite. This will probably end up saving you potentially days, if not weeks of stress, but ultimately it's your decision if you want to stay around and listen to the rest of this. So if you've already started entrepreneurship, then you know what I'm about to talk about and you can relate to a lot of this. But if you're just considering getting started, or you are literally just starting, so pre-12 months of actually supporting yourself financially, then you'll know what I'm going to be talking about, and that you're going to need to have high confidence. You're going to need to be very open-minded. You probably shouldn't be a people pleaser in the sense that you already understand the idea that you cannot please everybody. You can't sit there and blame others, and you have to take action, and specifically take action for yourself. So I think those are all things that just at the start of this, you need to know that you're going to have to do that. And as long as those things are in check, then you will be in a position to even think about some of these other things that I believe I'm going to break down. So off of the top of my head, I'm going to break down some of the biggest hurdles and things up to date. So about 3 years into my current business of an online marketing agency that I realize are such bigger hurdles than I would have ever expected them to be. And also just kind of relating them back to how hard entrepreneurship is, and you just don't think about it until it's happening to you. So I think one that might be a little bit obvious, but it's that you're going to invest more than just money. You're going to invest so much time, and you're going to invest so much of it that you're going to be tried and tested for your health. You're going to be tried and tested for your sanity, for your emotions, for your focus. Every single part of you is going to be tried and tested, and you're going to have to give all of it, not just to your business, but you have to remember that you have to give still some of it to either your partner, your family, your friends, your acquaintances. No matter what it is, you're going to invest more than money into your business. And when I say that, you're going to have to give so much attention to it, but you're also going to have to reserve attention for all of these other things. And so in doing that, an example is that if you're starting a business and you really are starting it and you're really putting in the time and effort, you're also going to be asked to go and do fun things on the weekend or in the evenings or whatever it may be. And you're going to have to turn that down sometimes. And you're going to have to remember that because you're starting a business, you're not always focused. You're not always present, I think is probably the better word, when you're with other people. And that's on you to try to make that effort to do that. But I think as an entrepreneur myself, I know that that's hard. I know it's going to be so hard to be present in all of those things when your main focus is your business, is getting where you feel a little bit of stability. And I mean real stability, where you know that you can step away from the business and you are not the business anymore. So even if you have a team of, say, 10 people like myself now, you know for a fact you can step away for 2 months and the business is going to be okay. That's where I think, at least in my opinion, in my eyes right now of my current journey and where I'm at now, I see that as kind of quote unquote stability and a level of at least a point where you feel a lot less stress, that you don't have to do every single thing. Even if there's 10 people to delegate to, I'm still at a point where even with 10 people, there are still probably one or two more positions I need to hire to effectively move away from this business. So again, going back to the main point, you're going to have to invest more than money. And I think, again, I'm not going to let this podcast be 2 hours because it very well could be, but investing more than just money in the idea that you're going to invest your time into the business and time that you may not expect, but it's because of that time that you're investing in the business that you don't expect, that it's going to take another set of stress, mental, physical, whatever it may be, from all these other things that are also affected, not being able to hang out with friends, not being able to do things that you enjoy that maybe get you away from the business. And again, that goes into balance and all these other things. So I'm not going to try and go off on all these tangents right now, but again, let's keep it simple. You're going to invest a lot more than money, and it's going to be a lot more than you expect. So I want to talk about something that's somewhat going on right now, and I think that this is just very real, and it's something that you can probably understand and fathom under the, like, before you actually start building your business. But I think until you're actually in it, and no matter what business it is, but just speaking from my own, if you have a service-based business, you're servicing clients and you've got employees and so on and so forth, and even maybe a couple suppliers or something, it's going to be 10 times harder and more stressful than you think it ever will be if an employee that is so crucial to the business is leaving you, let's say in year 3, and a client is leaving you, and a supplier is leaving you for whatever goodness knows reason, all in the same week. It literally could feel like the end of the world. And while that seems like it's just so, well, that's terrible timing and that's so unrealistic, all 3 of those couldn't happen, your biggest client, your best employee, whatever it is, that's not exactly what's happening to me now. But just if that were to happen, and it feels like it's very close to that, even with what's going on now, it's not even close to that. It's similar, but it's not that close to that. But it's just like going through that after you've taken 3 years to build something, and then to have, what feels like the end of the world kind of hit you, is just an enormous amount of stress that you cannot expect, that you're going to have to figure out how to resourcefully figure out how to navigate around. And again, going to the main point of this podcast, it's hard. Like, there's no right answer. I think there's a lot of things you can do to be well prepared and try to be well prepared. But I think that, again, it just goes back to it's hard. Like, there's so many things that you just do not expect as an entrepreneur, and you cannot forecast, you cannot plan for 100%. And when they come and they happen, you've got to be ready for it. You've got to be mentally, physically, emotionally present there, ready to handle it and get after it. And it's just hard. Again, this podcast is raw. We're not trying to edit too many things here. So I want you to know, like, this is so from the heart and deep down that, like, again, if you were just starting out, it's hard, man. Like, I know that it's hard. So, like, imagine, let's just take one of those to keep it simplified. Let's say you have 5 employees only, and they each are really set on one specific task. And granted, you can do all of these tasks because let's say you're a jack of all trades and you can do them, but you've hired each person because they're supposed to be the expert at what they do. And you've got pretty big clients now. It's been 3 to 4 years. You've built up the business. You've got pretty good revenue. You're doing $250,000, $500,000 a year. You're doing all right. And that one person leaves. Is it impossible to hire the next person? Absolutely not. You can probably figure it out in 7 to 10 days. But what's going to happen in those next 7 to 10 days? Is that going to hurt your client relationships? Is it going to hurt the performance of the business? And what's it going to do? And I think just no matter what, and overall, it's not a pleasant thing to go through. And again, you can plan and try to be prepared for these things by having good employees, by having good culture, by having good things in place, but it's never going to be perfect. And that's part of entrepreneurship. You've got to expect the unexpected. And I think that's really honestly a perfect way of putting entrepreneurship is hard, is try to be prepared to expect the unexpected. So with saying that, I'll talk about a couple of key things that I think specifically why entrepreneurship is hard, and maybe some of the problems as well as some of the solutions that may be paired with each other as well there too. So I think hiring one, because of what we just spoken about, is one of the biggest ones. And so hiring the right people, I think, is really key. I think what I see in a lot of companies is, especially probably bigger companies, because they can get away with it, is they hire a lot of people and they're not necessarily great at what they do. And it's maybe not the skill set that they should be being hired for. Granted, they can manage the task, but it's not what they're passionate about, or it's not what they actually want to do, or it's what maybe they're not, necessarily the best person to do that kind of task if they're not analytical, but they're in some kind of analytical task. And so I think when hiring, my best advice to myself and to my future self and to anyone listening is being exclusive. I think being really, really clear on what you are hiring the person to do. What are the person's skill sets that you are hiring for? Are there, is their IQ right? Is their, skill sets right? Is there characteristics of their personality? Do all of those meet and align with what you're hiring them for? And I think that if you're not being exclusive on that, then you're going to be making a really big mistake. So, for example, if you were to hire an account manager, someone that were to manage accounts, manage client relationships, that was very unfocused and was maybe a little bit more timid or shy and not outgoing, then it might not off the back, and I'm not saying in all cases, but just as a basic example here, may not be the best fit, because again, they're not going to be as well primed for that position as they may think that they have sold you to be, or that you had hoped for them to be, because maybe you're hiring and trying to hire someone quicker rather than trying to hire the right person. So with that said, I think it leads perfectly into delegation. And so delegation is only possible when you have hired the right people and when you have good employees. So I think understanding how to delegate is really important. So I think now there's always more room for improvement, and there's always more that can be done. There's, again, I'm not in a position where I'm perfectly delegating as I should be, but I've moved past a big point of learning how to delegate so that I can focus on what I need to focus on, so I can focus on what my roles as the owner are or should be. And so I think that, let's say you're at 1 or 2 employees, probably about that, you've probably starting to figure out delegation, but you haven't figured out entirely. And so I think that is where that biggest learning curve is going to take place exponentially, or start to exponentially take place, is my goodness, sorry about that, is going to start to take place at 1 to 2 of employees. And so with that said, I think that if you're in that position or you're headed in that position, understanding how to delegate from my personal and current experience that I have now that I can share is you need to figure out what it is that you're doing that's not allowing your business to grow and that you can hire someone else to do. And that may seem so simple, but I know that just a year and a half ago, when I only had 1 or 2 employees and I was still writing captions, I was still, doing XYZ that was not conducive to the exponential success of the business, I know that that's what was holding me back. So again, it may seem so simple to those that have already passed that, but when you're just starting out or before you're starting out, trying to figure out how to delegate and knowing when to delegate is so important. And again, I think that if you're doing something that's not crucial or conducive to your exponential success and growth of the business, you need to figure out who you can hire. Whether it's a part-time person, freelancer, full-time, doesn't matter. You've got to give it to them. Even if your business is going to break even, you've got to delegate so you can focus on the other roles and tasks that are going to allow your business to grow. So if you don't do delegation right, you're going to have to worry about time management a lot more. And I personally have always been incredible at time management. I think that's always been one of my skill sets that I knew I was quite good with from a very young age, just being highly organized and knowing, when to prioritize things and how to prioritize them and how to organize them. And so time management from someone that's maybe good at it, I would say that it's maybe a little bit harder to give advice perfectly, but the way that I would look at it, and I think my brain just works so well for time management, but I think that the way that my brain works is that when I'm doing something, I always ask myself, what are you doing? Is it conducive to your goals? Is it conducive to the success that you're trying to reach? Short term, long term, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Is it conducive to what you're trying to do? And if it's not moving the needle far enough, you need to stop and you probably need to delegate or just not do it. So it depends on the task, but you either need to give it to someone else or you need to not work on it. And I think it's one or the other. So I think also within time management, it's having a very clear picture of your goals and understanding what are your goals in order to reach the bigger overall goals that you might have. One of the ways I really do this, at least for my short-term goals and my day-to-day kind of tasks, if you will, is I use a app called Todoist. I've got this on my website at jordanglickman.com/resources if you want to check it out. I have a ton of resources on there that are very helpful in terms of just all the things that I use. Some are affiliate codes, so I may get like a small percentage, but a lot of them are also free. So I'm just putting them there as a way for other entrepreneurs or people that are in this space in general, entrepreneur or not, to be able to have tools that I know that I'm using that are helping me reach my goals that also may help them with theirs, regardless of what they're doing. So even if you're working for someone as an employee, some of these tools may help you better with your daily task or your organization skills, whatever it may be that you're working on specifically. So with that, going back to time management, I think making time is the number one thing, and how to make that time for whatever it is that you're not managing your time effectively to do with is using an app. So Todoist is a good example. There's probably a few others that you can probably use, but then also questioning what are you doing and is it conducive to what you're trying to do, both short and long term, based on the goals that you've set? And is it something you can delegate or is it something that you should completely cut? So time management and understanding how to do that is so key. And I think relating that back to entrepreneurship, you're not going to be comprehensive or able to fathom probably how much time management you should have. I know so many great business owners that probably don't have the best time management. And again, they're still successful. So, it's I think no matter what, you can still always find success. You don't have to master every single thing. But I think it's one of those things that if you find that you're able to master this one, it's going to help you with a lot of other things, in my opinion. And a lot of different things that are just very indirect. How maybe outside parties view you, if you're coming late to meetings or not, whether they're clients or they're suppliers. I think that's going to be helpful in a lot of different ways. Again, directly and indirectly for yourself and for, again, like as I mentioned as an example, how people view you. So time management and entrepreneurship, as the business grows, you're ultimately going to have to manage a lot more of your time much more effectively. So I think getting well rounded in that characteristic or skill set, if you will, early on is absolutely crucial. And I think that if you're already kind of in the middle of your journey and you haven't figured out how to manage your time effectively, feel free to reach out to me, because I don't know if I can give an entire 30-minute speech right now on this podcast, or maybe I should do one podcast only for it. If you think that I should and you're listening, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that. But I think that, again, time management, sticking to some of those basics, I think that that's going to be very helpful to some. But again, if you're far in the journey and you really want a proper podcast on time management and how I do it, managing a team of 10 people, clients, 20 plus clients, and so on and so forth, and a couple of side hustles as well, then I'd be happy to make a podcast on that. And I think the last one, something that I am relatively going through right now, is when you're trying to start something. So even if you're trying to start something brand new and you haven't really started your journey, or maybe you're starting your second journey, but your first one, you don't really count it as real. That was probably me, my first online training business. It was a good business. I made, a little bit of money, but not an excessive amount or something that I would want to make for the next 5 to 10 years consistently. So if you're getting to the point where you're trying to figure out what to do next, what to start next, Whether you're trying to figure out what new product to start in your current business, you're trying to find a new product that you want to sell, you want to start a new business that you want to buy or sell or create, or whatever it may be. I think when you're trying to start, again, it goes back to even some of these things I've already talked about, but hiring someone else to do this is probably the number one key. And the reason I say that is because we're moving our agency to a point where we want to start buying other businesses rather than servicing others. So we want to buy them and then service them in-house, which is a really cool model. But I found that I think what the hardest part of it is finding a business to buy, one that meets the criteria that I have and that I'm setting out to try to find. And so I think what I'm actually going to end up having to do is hire someone to do that for me, to analyze businesses and to bring them to me and give me what is called deal flow. So again, this is just from my current experience and what I can give, but as I'm going through this journey, I've got this whole business model worked out of how we'll do it. Everything looks beautiful. I've even got funding committed to me to do this from an outside party. But here I am stuck on the first step. I can't find a business to buy. And I'm sure I'll find one sooner than later. And I'm sure in the future, I'll figure out how to make this 10 times easier. And that's what this podcast is for, is to come back and show, well, this is how I overcame this. So I can say, yep, in episode 14, I was unclear of how to buy a business and how to find one. And then in episode 35, I figured out a pretty kind of scientific or methodical way on how to do it. So again, hopefully that's the cool thing of what this podcast is recording things raw and in person of what's happening with me now. So I can revert back to, here's what it was like when I was trying to figure it out. Here's the answer. And maybe that helps somebody. Maybe not. Maybe it's just for me to look back on and think that it's cool. Who knows? But I think ultimately coming down to it, trying to start, it's either hiring someone else or talking with and getting around the right people. Like I actually just spoke with a personal trainer and they're trying to figure out what they're trying to do with their life right now. And I gave them about an hour's time on a call saying, this is actually what I would exactly do if I was still a personal trainer and I knew what I knew now about business, not even marketing in general, just specifically business and how to build a business where you're not the business. I thought, again, like it just being around the right people, being able to speak with people, being able to hire someone to do it, I think is probably the best answer there. So again, entrepreneurship's hard because it's not always easy to figure out what you want to do, but you know that you want to build something, you know that you're destined to do it, but you just don't know what. And I've been in that position a couple times. So I think that the best way is to be around the right people to get the right ideas or to hire someone to help figure it out for you. I think some other things that I know from some great entrepreneurs that have been hard for them that I maybe have not had trouble with yet or to date has been raising capital. So I've not had trouble with that because I've not needed to do it until just recently, in which case it was actually very easy because I just verbally had money committed to me. So I probably have seen nothing in order to speak on that from experience, but I know a lot of entrepreneurs that find it very hard to raise capital. I know a lot of people say that finding capital is extremely easy. So I think once I get to that point, I'll speak on raising capital when I have more experience to speak about it. I think marketing is another one. And I think as someone who runs a marketing agency, I'll try to speak about this from a non-biased standpoint of view. But I think that if you are a business owner or you're trying to start a business and you don't have a strong background in marketing, probably digital marketing, because that's what's most key and important today, then I would say and recommend to hire someone. Now, it doesn't have to be an agency, but I would recommend you hire someone that knows what they're doing. So there's a difference between someone that knows what they're doing and someone that's offering it. Of course, it seems obvious, but again, you'd be very surprised if I told you all the stories that I saw. And so I think hiring someone that truly knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, so that you can learn from them. And then in the future, you can hire them or hire someone in-house to eventually bring it in-house. Because I think the majority of, top bigger businesses, that is their ultimate goal, is to not outsource everything, right? So for at least from the point of view of the things that I've seen to date. So I think with marketing, my best advice is to hire someone that knows what they're doing, and don't just hire them, but try to learn from them along the way. I think that that's absolutely critical. And another one is cash flow. And I think that in simplicity, again, I've not had much of a problem with that. I've seen a little bit of it in our service-based agency, and we don't have as much of a problem with it because the business is a cash cow. But what I can say about cash flow is specifically just that if you're having troubles with it, it likely comes down to budgeting. So it's likely just coming down to you budgeting better, being able to know your finances, your accounting, know that like the back of your hand, whether you're doing a product business, for example, and you're understanding when you need to order inventory, when that inventory has been maybe amortized over a few months, and then trying to again forecast and project, whether it's through pro formas or whatever it may be. Again, I'm probably maybe even getting myself mixed up because I'm also not fully present here because I'm just so stressed of what's happening in my own life right now. But nonetheless, I think that cash flow just ultimately comes down to budgeting properly. And so if that's a problem that you're going through, I don't have enough experience to speak on it, but I would imagine that it comes down to budgeting, understanding your finances and your counting better so that you can forecast a lot better for your business. And I think the very last one is just so critical. I think this is the biggest one that you have to expect as a trait or a hurdle, if you will, to know why entrepreneurship is so hard. I think all these other things are hard, like an employee leaving you or clients leaving you or your biggest client leaving you and you lose 30% of your revenue, whatever it is. I think those are all hard, right? But I think the hardest one that you're going to have to weather through is self-doubt. I think that self-doubt is something that you're going to have to be able to be fully capable of overcoming. And not 100%, because I don't believe that that's going to be entirely possible, especially as an entrepreneur. You're always going to want more. You always should have self-doubt. I think I've met maybe one, maybe more people in my life that didn't have self-doubt. They were just overly confident. And I think that that almost in a way hurt them and wouldn't be as conducive to their success on the ideology that my self-doubt also fires me up. It also puts me in a position where I need to think more critically. I need to think about how to be more well prepared for maybe some of the things that I've talked about previously. And so I think self-doubt is good, but of course, too much of it is never good. And it can be overbearing. It can be a real test to, again, your emotions, your mental, your physical health, even as well too. And I think that the best way to overcome self-doubt or do the best you can to keep it as minimal as possible is having the right support system of people around you, working on your goals and tasks. So when I say that, I mean like don't sit there all day, Saturday through Sunday playing video games. Like it's like just like eating cake. Once you eat the cake, you feel like, poop afterwards, and then you're just back to feeling like, crap. So like you feel like crap, you eat cake, and then you finish it, and then you feel like crap again. It's the same thing. Like if on Friday you're not feeling great, you're like, I'll play video games this weekend, and you play the entire weekend. That's not a great example or not a great action point for yourself, because you're going to come back Monday feeling like crap again, not necessarily refreshed. Like what I would do is, or at least what I do, is I'll maybe play for 6 hours. Like if I'm going to play video games, or I'm not a big video game person, but if I'm going to do something like video games or not conducive to my goals and success, I'll do it for 6 hours. I'll do it for a half day. Maybe at most I'll have one entire day off with no work, which is very rare, but if it happens, it happens. But maybe about a half day, and then I'm back at it. And so I think, again, overcoming self-doubt, a big part of it and key for myself is working on your goals and tasks and just keeping on with them, because if you feel like you can set them aside for 2 days and you're not that driven to keep after them, no matter how, stressed or down you may feel, I think that you just maybe don't have the right motivators. You might not have the right why and purpose behind you or in front of you to work towards. So I think overall, you pulling all of this together, it's going to take some serious perseverance, probably some intelligence, and you're going to need to be highly resourceful in order to be a good entrepreneur. And I don't think I have an example or a definition of a good entrepreneur, but I think in order to be an entrepreneur and to really make it happen, and to the point where you really have a business that is sellable, or one that is going to keep you financially stable for decades to come, I think that you're going to really need to have those key traits. And again, probably speaking to an audience who is just starting or just in the mix of their business into a couple years. And so I think from that perspective, hopefully this has been valuable in showing at least where I am in my journey, what I see as some of the hard kind of things in starting a business, running a business, and maybe pointed out some of those things that just you may not have expected to be so hard. And again, I'll probably make another video or a couple of, or not video, but podcasts of why entrepreneurship is so hard, maybe one that's a little bit more clear, a little bit more thought out, but hopefully this has provided some kind of insight to just the rawness of like how hard it is and how much I can relate to it. So I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you want a couple resources of things that I use and tools or apps that I use in order to kind of work towards my goals more efficiently and effectively, you can go to jordanglickman.com/resources. It should be in the show notes of this podcast. So otherwise, I hope that you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.